Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. And today we're going exploring the life and philosophy of our Roman emperor, who also happened to be a pretty incredible thinker, Marcus Aurelius.
A fascinating guy, for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to be digging into his personal journal meditations to see what kind of wisdom we can pull out of it, and more importantly, maybe how it can apply to our lives today.
I love that
Yeah.
practical application of ancient wisdom.
Exactly, because it's wild to think about. This guy was a Roman emperor. He had unlimited power wealth beyond measure.
Yeah.
You know, the whole Roman Empire at his
The
fingertips.
good life, right?
And what did he choose to focus on?
Right.
Virtue.
Yeah.
Not exactly your typical image of a Roman emperor.
No, not at all. I think most of us, when we think of Roman emperors, we think of, indulging in all the pleasures of life.
Yeah.
The finer things.
Excess.
Excess, exactly.
Yeah.
But Marcus Aurelius, he really chose a different path. One of self-reflection, discipline, and really trying to live a virtuous life.
Yeah. It's almost like he was going against the grain of his own society, his own time.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, it makes his writings even more intriguing because it wasn't like he was trying to impress anyone or, build a public image. This was his private journal.
Yeah.
His own personal wrestling match with, the big questions of life.
I think that's what makes it so valuable for us today. We're getting this raw, honest glimpse into the mind of a man who is grappling with real challenges, trying to figure out how to live a good life amidst the chaos of the world. He wasn't putting on a show. He was being real.
Yeah, and it makes it so much more relatable.
Exactly.
So let's unpack some of his key ideas. One of the things that jumps out at me from meditations is this concept of living in accordance with nature. What did he actually mean by that? Was he just like a big fan of the great outdoors?
Well, I think he appreciated the natural world, but he was talking about something much deeper than that. He saw nature as encompassing not just the physical world, but also the natural order of things, the inherent purpose kind of woven into the fabric of existence. It's like everything has its own unique role to play.
So like everything has its own programming almost.
Exactly. He uses these really vivid examples. A tree growing tall and strong, a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, an eagle soaring through the sky, each fulfilling its potential not for praise or recognition, but simply because that's what it's meant to do. And I think for him that was really powerful. It was like looking at nature and seeing this kind of effortless unfolding of purpose.
Yeah, it's like they're all just following their internal programming,
Yeah.
expressing their essence. Okay, so where do we fit into this natural order?
Right.
What's our human programming?
Well, for Marcus Aurelius, I think human potential was all about virtue. He believed that we have this duty to strive to be the kindest, most virtuous versions of ourselves. Not about achieving some external marker of success, but really about an internal transformation, becoming better human beings.
Nope, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. Life isn't always about fulfilling our potential, right?
Right.
I mean, we encounter difficult people,
Absolutely.
challenging situations, things happen. Did he just tell himself, to think happy thoughts and it would all be okay?
He had a more nuanced approach than that.
Okay.
He actually saw these difficult people as an inevitable part of the natural order. He even compares them to like thorns on a vine. They're part of the landscape.
Okay, I get the analogy.
Right.
So we can't avoid them, but how do we deal with them?
The key for him wasn't trying to eliminate these thorns, but rather controlling your reaction to them. He emphasized not judging others.
Okay.
Because let's face it, we all have our own faults, And he uses this great example. He talks about, if you encounter a thief,
Right.
don't immediately judge that person. There might be reasons why they're resorting to stealing, maybe to feed their family. We don't always know the full context of people's actions. So it's about cultivating a sense of understanding even when it's hard.
Yeah, that's a powerful reminder to practice empathy.
Absolutely.
Even when it's difficult.
Absolutely. And it connects to this other idea of his, this idea of interconnectedness.
Okay.
He uses another analogy from nature. He talks about how trees bear fruit for animals. Animals die to feed worms. It's a cycle of interdependence. He reminds himself, we are born for each other. Like we're all part of this grand tapestry, playing our roles.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It makes you think about the bigger picture, for sure.
For sure.
Okay, so speaking of challenges, let's talk about the Stoic approach to adversity. Something that we all face in different forms. Life throws curveballs. So how did Marcus Aurelius suggest we navigate those tough times?
He didn't sugarcoat it. He acknowledged that adversity is inevitable. It's a fundamental part of the human experience. But he believed that by facing challenges head-on, preparing ourselves mentally and emotionally, we can actually grow from those experiences.
Okay, but that's easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. He knew that. He saw adversity as a chance to practice virtue, to come out stronger and more resilient, and he would remind himself, bear these events as a brave man. Like, it's about looking for the opportunity in the obstacle.
Yeah, I'm starting to see the appeal of this mindset.
Right.
It's about embracing the reality of life, both the good and the bad, and using it all as fuel for personal development. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about all the external stuff, like wealth, possessions. I mean, he was an emperor after all.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. He wasn't preaching poverty from some ivory tower.
Right.
He didn't demonize wealth, but he advocated for a mindful, detached relationship with material things. Appreciate what you have, but don't become overly attached to it, because true potential lies in personal growth, cultivating virtue, not in accumulating possessions.
It's about recognizing that those things can be fleeting.
Exactly.
They can be taken away. True wealth is internal.
Precisely.
Okay, so that brings us to another recurring theme in meditations, one that might seem a bit heavy, but is actually, I think, quite liberating, and that's death.
Yeah, he thought about death a lot.
He did. A lot, a lot.
He did, and he didn't shy away from it either. He saw it as a natural part of life,
Yeah.
the inevitable end to our time here. He even viewed it as a duty to be fulfilled, the final act in our human experience.
So not something to be feared, but accepted.
Exactly. It's about facing death with courage and dignity. Having lived a virtuous life without fear of the inevitable, he has this great line where he says, "Death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back."
Wow. That's a profound way to look at it, for sure. Okay, so that leads us to another key distinction at the heart of Stoic philosophy, and that's the difference between pleasure and happiness.
Yes.
In our culture, happiness is often portrayed as this constant state of bliss.
Right.
Something we need to chase.
Yeah, always striving for that next hit of dopamine.
Exactly. But the Stoics had a very different view.
They did. They distinguished between what they called fleeting pleasure and enduring happiness. So for them, true happiness wasn't about external gratification or material things. It was about living a life of virtue, fulfilling your potential, aligning yourself with the natural order. Not about feeling good all the time,
Right.
but rather about living a good life.
Yeah, and that idea of a good life, I think, is closely tied to their concept of duty.
Absolutely.
So what did duty actually mean to Marcus Aurelius? Was it just about following rules?
It went deeper than that, I think. For him, duty was about embracing our inherent purpose as human beings, striving to be the kindest, most virtuous versions of ourselves, not for external reward, but simply because that's what we're meant to do.
So our duty is tied to our potential.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our unique talents and abilities, and yes, even our flaws, and using them to contribute to the world in a positive way. I love that it's not just about self-improvement for self-improvement's sake.
Right.
It's about using that growth to make a difference.
And that's where that idea of interconnectedness comes back into play.
Okay.
Remember, Marcus Aurelius believed that we are all born for each other.
Yeah?
We have a duty to help one another, just like those trees bearing fruit for the animals, and the animals dying to feed the worms,
Wow, it's this beautiful cycle of interdependence.
Exactly. So it's not just about individual growth, it's about contributing to the well-being of the whole.
This is so inspiring. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But we've covered so much ground already. Living in accordance with nature, dealing with difficult people, embracing adversity, finding true happiness, and even facing death with courage.
Big topics.
And we're just getting started.
I know, right?
There's so much richness in Marcus Aurelius's writings. It's like he packed a lifetime of wisdom into this one little book.
It's incredible. And what's amazing is that it's still relevant today. His insights transcend time and culture.
Yeah.
And they offer us these really valuable tools for navigating the complexities of life,
Yeah,
even in our modern world.
absolutely. And I think that's what makes him so compelling. He was grappling with the same fundamental questions that we face today. How to live a good life, how to deal with suffering, how to find meaning and purpose in a world that can often feel chaotic and unpredictable.
Right. And he wasn't afraid to be honest about his own struggles.
Yeah, and that's what makes him so relatable.
Exactly. We're all in this together.
We are. So for everyone listening, stick with us. We're going to keep diving deeper into Marcus Aurelius's wisdom in part 2 of this deep dive.
Can't wait.
We'll explore more of his insights, and more importantly, we'll talk about how you can actually apply these ideas to your own life,
Love it.
your own challenges, your own pursuit of a meaningful and fulfilling existence.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
Awesome. Welcome back to our deep dive into the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius. I'm still processing all the insights from the first part of our conversation.
Me too. There's so much to unpack.
It's amazing how this guy who lived almost 2,000 years ago can still speak to us so directly today.
It's the enduring power of philosophy, isn't it? The search for truth, for meaning, for a way to navigate the complexities of life. Those are timeless human concerns.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that makes Marcus Aurelius so relatable is his honesty. He doesn't shy away from the challenges of trying to live a virtuous life.
Yeah, he's very real.
Yeah, he acknowledges the struggles, the temptations, the doubts. It's almost like we're getting a glimpse into his inner therapist sessions.
I love that analogy.
Right.
It's like we're right there with him.
Yeah, raw, vulnerable, incredibly human.
And I think it's in those moments of vulnerability that his wisdom really shines. He's not preaching from a pedestal of perfection. He's sharing his own journey, his own struggles. And in doing so, he gives us permission to embrace our own imperfections.
That's so important, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with images of perfect lives on social media.
Right, it's easy to feel inadequate.
It is. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us that it's okay to not be okay all the time. It's about striving for virtue, yes, but also about being kind to ourselves along the way.
Exactly. Growth is a process, a journey with ups and downs.
So how does this Stoic approach actually play out in our daily lives? I mean, we're not Roman emperors facing barbarian hordes.
Right, we're not exactly battling lions in the Colosseum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how can we apply these principles to our modern world?
That's the beauty of it. These ideas are remarkably adaptable. Take the concept of living in accordance with nature.
Okay.
We may not be facing literal lions in the arena, but we certainly have our own metaphorical beasts to contend with.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Right. Deadlines, traffic jams, that never-ending email inbox.
Those are definitely my modern-day trials.
Exactly. But just as Marcus Aurelius encouraged himself to face external challenges with courage and composure, so can we, whether it's a stressful work project, a difficult conversation, or even just the daily grind. We can choose to approach it with a Stoic mindset.
So it's about focusing on what we can control, our own thoughts, actions, and reactions,
Yeah.
and letting go of the rest.
You got it. It's about remembering that we always have a choice in how we respond to any situation. We can choose to react with anger, frustration, despair, or we can choose to approach it with calmness, clarity, and purpose.
And that choice, that internal shift, is where our true power lies.
Absolutely. We may not always be able to control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. And it's in that response, that internal freedom, that we find real strength and resilience.
Okay, I'm with you on that. Now let's talk about happiness.
Okay.
In our culture, happiness is often portrayed as this constant state of bliss.
Right, like it's some destination you arrive at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something we need to chase. But the Stoics had a very different view. Right.
They did. Remember, they distinguished between fleeting pleasure and enduring happiness. For them, true happiness wasn't about external gratification or material things. It was about living a life of virtue, fulfilling your potential, aligning yourself with the natural order. Not about feeling good all the time, but rather about living a good life.
And that idea of a good life, I think, is closely tied to their concept of duty.
Absolutely.
So what did duty actually mean to Marcus Aurelius? Was it just about following rules?
For him, duty went much deeper than that. It was about embracing our inherent purpose as human beings, striving to be the kindest, most virtuous versions of ourselves, not for external reward, but simply because that's what we're meant to do.
So our duty is tied to our potential.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our unique talents and abilities.
Yeah.
And yes, even our flaws, and then using them to contribute to the world in a positive way.
I love that. It's not just about self-improvement for self-improvement's sake.
Right.
It's about using our growth to make a difference.
And that's where the Stoic idea of interconnectedness comes back into play. Remember, Marcus Aurelius believed that we are all born for each other.
Yeah.
That we have a duty to help one another, just like those trees bearing fruit for the animals and the animals dying to feed the worms.
Wow. It's a beautiful cycle of interdependence, isn't it?
It is. So it's not just about individual growth. It's about contributing to the well-being of the whole.
This is so inspiring. But let's get real for a second.
Yeah.
How do we actually put this into practice? It's one thing to read about Stoicism. It's another to actually embody it in our daily lives. Give me some actionable steps.
Well, I think a good starting point is becoming aware of your own thoughts and reactions when you face a challenging situation. Pause for a moment before you react. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If it's not, let it go. If it is, choose to respond in a way that aligns with your values.
So it's about cultivating that pause, that
Yeah,
space between stimulus and response.
exactly. And in that space, we have the power to choose virtue, to choose kindness, to choose courage.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's empowering, right?
It is.
We're not just victims of circumstance. We have agency. We have choice.
Absolutely. And remember, it's a practice. Some days you'll nail it, others you'll fall flat on your face. The key is to keep coming back to those Stoic principles, to keep striving for alignment between our actions and our highest nature.
This has been so insightful. What's one piece of wisdom from Marcus Aurelius that has really resonated with you personally?
One that sticks with me is his reminder to appreciate what you have without becoming overly attached to it. He understood that true wealth lies not in possessions, but in who we are.
That's so powerful. Finding joy in the present moment without clinging too tightly to things that can be easily taken away.
Exactly. It frees us to focus on what truly matters,
Yeah.
cultivating virtue, contributing to others, and living a life of meaning and purpose.
Okay, fellow knowledge seekers. Be sure to join us for part 3 of our deep dive. We'll continue to unpack Marcus Aurelius' wisdom and explore how it can empower us to live more fulfilling and meaningful lives. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Marcus Aurelius. We've been exploring his personal journal meditations, and I feel like we've uncovered some really profound insights, especially when it comes to dealing with life's challenges.
It's incredible how relevant his writings still are, even though he lived almost 2,000 years ago. It's like he had this deep understanding of human nature that transcends time and culture.
Yeah, and one of the things that I find most fascinating about him is his willingness to tackle the big questions, the ones that most of us try to avoid, like death, for instance.
Yeah.
He seemed to think about death quite a bit.
He did. It was a recurring theme in meditations. And unlike a lot of people, he didn't shy away from it. He actually saw death as an integral part of life, the natural endpoint of our journey here.
It's interesting that he referred to death as a duty to be fulfilled.
Yeah, that's a really powerful way of looking at it, right?
It is. But how can death be a duty?
Well, remember, for Marcus Aurelius, living in accordance with nature meant embracing the entire cycle of life, from birth to death. He saw death not as an end, but as a transition, a return to the source from which we came.
So it's about accepting death as a natural part of the order of things.
Exactly, not something to be feared or dreaded. And by accepting death, we can actually free ourselves to live more fully in the present moment. If we're constantly preoccupied with our mortality, we miss out on the beauty and wonder of life that's unfolding right now.
That's a great point. It's about focusing on what we can control, our actions and choices in the present, rather than dwelling on the inevitable.
And it also ties back to the Stoic emphasis on virtue. Remember, for Marcus Aurelius, a virtuous life wasn't just about being good in some abstract sense. It was about fulfilling our potential as human beings, contributing to the well-being of others, and living in alignment with the natural order of things.
So basically, when we strive to embody virtue in our daily lives, we can face death with a sense of peace and acceptance, knowing that we lived a life of purpose and meaning.
Exactly. It's about embracing the fullness of life, both the joys and the sorrows, and recognizing that death is simply the final chapter in our story. And it's up to us to write that story in a way that reflects our values and our highest aspirations.
That's beautiful. So much of what we've discussed today comes back to this idea of taking ownership of our lives, of making conscious choices that align with our values. It's really empowering when you think about it.
It is, and I think that's the true legacy of Marcus Aurelius. He reminds us that even in the face of challenges and uncertainties, we have the power to choose virtue, to choose kindness, to choose courage. And in those choices, we discover our true freedom and our capacity for greatness.
This has been such an enlightening conversation. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of Marcus Aurelius' wisdom.
Me too. There's so much depth to explore in Meditations. It's a book that you can keep coming back to throughout your life and always find something new and insightful.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, we hope you found this deep dive into the mind of Marcus Aurelius as enriching as we have. His ideas are timeless and offer valuable guidance for navigating the complexities of modern life. So whether you're dealing with a personal challenge, a professional setback, or simply trying to find more meaning and purpose in your life, remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Choose wisely, my friends, and keep striving to live a life of virtue and excellence.